WOW Project. My name is Ana Maria de Quesada. I'm the producing artistic director here at the WOW Project. I want to give a huge thank you to Alan Cumming and Linda Simpson. Super last minute, we threw this together. Alan has been a huge supporter of the arts in the East Village. He runs Club Cumming up the street from us, and he's attended several of our performances here, and he was kind enough to offer to do this for us this one night. And Linda Simpson is amazing. She's done her drag exposure here multiple times over the years, and she agreed to be up here with him in a night of conversation. So huge thank you to both of them. And I'm going to introduce you to our person who's leading the conversation tonight, Linda Simpson. A little bit about Linda. Since the 1980s, I'm reading this. I can't memorize all this. This multifaceted drag queen has shined as a nightlife personality, media maven, performer, game show host, Drag Bingo, and drag documentarian, Drag Explosion. Known for her witty demeanor and unique blend of sass and class, she enthusiastically embraces the role she was born to play, a reigning queen. And I'm glad to say we're having an encore performance of the Drag Explosion here on Friday, November 15th, so please check that out. And here we go. I'd like to present to the stage Linda Simpson.
Thank you, Anna. Well, thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here at the WILD Project. It's a fundraiser, so anything to help WILD Project, which is such a great space. Anna and I were talking a little earlier. She's got tons of plans to make this an even more ambitious art center. And good luck, Anna. Good luck with that. So Anna just told a little biography. I'll just expand a little. And then I used to live in the East Village for many years. I live in Hell's Kitchen now, but so I'm familiar with the turf. WILD Project, I think started about right when I moved. But anyways, got some familiarity with the neighborhood, and I'm always glad to help an arts organization. So when Anna called me or emailed me and said, could you please be part of this event and interview Alan Cumming? And I said, sure, it sounds great. Just one question. Who's Alan Cumming? No, Alan is, of course, a Renaissance man. He really is. I mean, I was looking, I've been doing some research beyond what I already knew about Alan. But Alan's incredible. I mean, really, his resume includes theater, film, movies, television. He's written a lot of books, actually, and articles, etc. He's an activist. I mean, he really is quite amazing, and we're lucky to have him here. His very active Twitter account says that he's a Scottish elf in a middle-aged man's body. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Alan Cumming! Hi, Alan. Thank you so much for being here. Everyone's happy to see you. So, Alan, like I said, I didn't describe your whole autobiography, which is, lengthy at this point because you've done so much.
I'm so old.
Wow. But first thing first, what are you doing for Halloween?
I'm waking up in Savannah. I'm going to Savannah tomorrow for a few days, which is a great place to start Halloween because it's so spooky anyway.
Yeah, beautiful architecture.
And then I'm coming back here, and I'm going to be going to the Halloween extravaganza at Club Cumming.
Oh! Speaking of Club Cumming,
yes,
is that your cabaret over on 6th Street?
That's
You're talking about
505 East 6th Street, TNT.
Oh my goodness! Well, Club Cumming is how old now?
2
years old.
Just about our seconds.
And if you haven't been there, it's a wonderful performance space with a stage, which is nice.
The size of a
shoebox.
Yes,
but it's a stage. And how has it been a club owner in the East Village?
Oh, it's been great. I mean, it wasn't sort of on my what do you call it, bucket list or anything, but it just sort of happened. Club Coming was sort of a party that it started in my dressing room after Cabaret, and the last time I did that on Broadway, and it was actually out of necessity because I was doing, the show on Broadway and a TV show, The Good Wife, at the same time, and that was an accident. I didn't mean to do them both, and I just thought I'm going to have no fun whatsoever because I won't be able to go out. Because one of the things I think about, when I do a play in the theatre, I just think how lovely, because you've got a routine and a structure, and you can sort of see your friends for drinks and everything afterwards. And so I just thought I should have a bar in my dressing room, so I won't have to go anywhere, just bring people to me. So that was how Club Coming started. And then, so when it came, and I used to do it after my concerts and things, and some pop-up ones, and then it just all happened that we took over the old Eastern Bloc and made this, and it's been a great thing that when you have an idea, you have a sort of you want somewhere to have a sensibility and a sort of energy, and you sort of put that out into the world, and then people bring that, and it becomes that. It's a really great feeling, and I go there and I'm just amazed by the talent and the range of people who go. Actually, when the best compliments when people say to me, "Oh, it feels like old New York." I love that. Like a time when people were. It was not so delineated about what you did and where you went. It was a bit more mixed.
And then, are you involved in the day-to-day, or are you more the figurehead that comes in?
I'm the figurehead, but also we have meetings, and we talk about things, and we had a vodka tasting. I'm involved in those. There's a new Scottish vodka and gin company actually that we're going to have in the bar, and we had a thing with it. And things like. I mean, I don't order the booze or anything, but I'm very involved in there's 4 of us in it, and I'm very involved in the sort of Daniel sort of programs it, and with Sam, but I'm very kind of I keep an eye on it, and I used to, when it first started, there was a thing where there's a sort of app where you can look and you can see, like when someone buys a drink, it will say 2 tequila sodas.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you can see. I used to be. I was shooting.
You mean in real time?
Yeah, like a Square app or something. And I used to be because when it first started, I was shooting this TV show, and I'd be in my bar learning my lines. That's how I like to learn lines. And I would have the little thing there, and I'd be like, "Oh my God, someone just bought 4 Heinekens!" I'd be so happy.
Well, you were saying, we were talking a little backstage, that you've learned some of the difficulties, though, of owning a bar.
Yes,
too.
well, we had about a year ago, maybe a little more, a year and a bit ago, we had an issue with the community board, and it was a really interesting thing. Like it was sort of like a vendetta. I felt very much there was a vendetta
Against the bar?
Against me.
Oh, you?
Yeah, it was against the bar ostensibly, but come on in. Good night. We're all friends here. It was one of these things where the community board told us that we had the wrong license or something, and it was the wrong rules. Like 16, something ridiculous. Like 16 years ago, the wrong box had been ticked, or someone had signed it, and so we were told we had to stop having performance at the bar, and it's a cabaret bar. So it was awful because for 3 months. We weren't able to have performance, and we weren't able to employ all the performers, we pay all our performers. And all these kids who, rely on that didn't get paid for 3 months. And then, and also, we lost money because of the bar. The thing about it is, to cut a long story short, when we got to we won the community board thing, blah, blah, we still had to go to the state liquor authority. And it was like, I felt like Sally Field and, not without my daughter. I was ready to make my impassioned speech. And at the very last minute, the community board, who are supposed to be, supporting and representing the community, dropped the case. So, and the guy, the state liquor guy was like, what are we doing here then? And so basically, because they've been pressured by politicians and everyone saying, you've just got no case here, this is just, and they actually told us in a meeting that it was because I brought all this attention to the bar, and it kind of pissed them off. and that's why they found out all these kind of, some sort of thing we hadn't ticked. But then at the very last minute they dropped the case completely. So we had to, if we had been, there's 4 of us, a couple of us, several of us, and this is not, I don't rely on Club Coming as my income. But I might have, I might have just been one person and that would be my income. Had that been the case, I probably would have had to close the bar. Because we had to spend like $40,000 on lawyers' fees and we lost all this money. It could have broken us. And that's what I feel, what made me so angry is that these are the people who are supposed to be representing and supporting our community. And I actually, in one of the meetings we had with them, I said, it's ironic that you, our community board, are making me realise what a great sense of community we have created at Club Coming, because all these people came out to support us. And that was, you're sort of attacking us and trying to bring us down, and I don't know why that is. And I just think it was just a sort of, I feel my celebrity kind of pissed off people.
Well, were they worried that all of a sudden Club Coming was going to have, so much traffic outside of it? Or?
I mean, I don't understand. Even if we're packed, it's like 100 people.
Yeah.
It's a tiny bar.
I
just think it was. I just think these, people with power in a sort of certain way were annoyed by the attention that we were getting. I don't know. I really don't understand it. I don't want to. And also the fact they dropped it at the last minute.
Yeah.
Just have some balls, right?
Right.
I don't. So anyway, it was all good. It all ended up great, but I feel very like Daniel, one of my partners in the bar. He is trying to join the community board to actually be a part of it, because I think the community board should represent the community. And actually, there's no one on that community board who was a bar owner. And so I admire him that he's trying to do something about it. I would, but I'm not really here enough to sort of go to all the meetings. But it just was a really interesting thing to, suddenly be faced with like the reality of business and sort of. But it felt like kids in school bullying you, or just bratty people who had some power and were trying to just poke you. And then at the very last minute, when they were like challenged on it, they were like, oh no, nothing. But they'd sort of wasted all that time and energy and money, and especially I feel because for 3 months, a lot of people who depend on working at the bar weren't able to be paid, and I feel that's the biggest tragedy and the most shocking thing about it.
Right. Ultimately, it's an economic killer.
Totally. But the one thing that we were going to do, we didn't do because it would have been, but it was sort of a nice sort of event. When you break up with someone and you think of these terrible things you want to do, and you don't end up doing it. We were going to do this thing. There was a lady on the community board called Susan Stetzer, who was particularly kind of spiky about what?
He's writing down.
She was one of the people who was quite sort of mean in this whole process. And we were going to, when we changed our cocktail menu, we were going to have a thing called the Susan Seltzer, which was soda water that was gone flat and bitter. We didn't do it. That would be mean and pointless and not very nice.
Well, Ellen, I think that you are sort of in this, group that includes like John Cameron Mitchell and Debbie Harry that are famous, very famous personalities, but you still keep abreast, with the downtown New York world,
Yeah.
Is that because you just have a real genuine interest in it, or is it that, it's because of the kind of sensibility that you grew up with?
I think it's both these things, and also I live in the East Village. I've lived here for a long time. I love it. I feel it's sort of feels to me like the last area in Manhattan that has its identity is that it is mixed. That I feel it's economically, racially, everything. It's a very mixed neighborhood, and that I love that. I don't want to be in a place where everyone is the same. And I just love it. I love that it's rich in history in terms of the arts and nightlife and culture and everything like that. And I think it's a lovely place. And also that it was I'm drawn to the fact that it was built for workers. This area was built for where the workers lived, and I feel I'm a worker. You know, I feel like that. And also, though, I feel like a long time ago I made a very conscious decision that if I wanted to live my life, I didn't want to I could easily live in a place where I didn't come into contact with people. I was sort of closed off. You know, a lot of people I know who live in LA or even in New York, it's possible to live a life where you don't really engage with people. And I don't want to do that. And I kind of think that the way to sort of go about that is to sort of fully embrace, and I just go out all the time, and I think you've got to, there are certain things that happen, just being famous and going out in the streets and in the world, that you have to deal with a great level of self-consciousness, for example. But I feel I would rather deal with that, and I think in the East Village it's easier to deal with that when people, it is a community, people do know you, and than live a life where I was sort of, in a little cocoon.
Well, you are ubiquitous, because seriously, there's so many Alan Cumming sightings all over the place. I mean, for better or for worse. And then, Ellen, so when you first came to New York, when you moved to New York, was that because of Broadway?
Yeah, I came to New York to do cabaret.
And that was when you decided to move to New York also?
Well, I came, I was living in London, I came sort of, it's one of those things, you don't know how long it's going to be.
This was what,
1998.
Okay.
At the beginning of, end of 97,
okay.
Literally a few days before the end of 97. But I didn't know how, when this was an open-ended thing, so it could have been, but I sort of knew in my heart that I wasn't going back to London. And I've never gone back. I have a visual representation of the difference between living in London and living in New York.
Yeah.
This is living in London. This is living in New York.
Alright, well that's good too. Now, when you moved to New York, you made such a splash though. Did you feel all of a sudden that you were like, I mean, it must have been great, you were like toast of the town, because you did make such, a great impression, That must have been like really heady day.
It was, it really was, but it was also sort of overwhelming, because I had nothing to compare it to. I didn't really know, I knew nothing about New York and Broadway and all those things, and I just thought, and also because it was going to happen the year before, and we lost the theatre, and so I just kind of didn't really believe it was going to happen, and I didn't really know what it was going to be like. And so I remember when I was making a film in Prague, and someone said to me, what are you doing next? I went, I'm going to New York to do a play. And then I remember driving from the airport, and I saw my name on a big, huge billboard, and I was like, this is a bit bigger than I thought. And the whole thing was, I didn't know Broadway. I didn't, like the day when it opened, there was a press lady who was dealing with me all the time, and I remember saying to her at the party, it's been so nice, and thanks so much, and you've been lovely, I guess I want to be seeing you very much now. And she was like, Alan, awards season's about to begin. And I was like, what does that mean? The play was over, the play was on, she'd go. And I, just all that stuff, I didn't know about all that. So it was, and I was alone in the city. I had great fun, but it took me a long time later to understand what a big deal it had been, and what a splash it had been, and how I just think it hit at sort of a perfect storm of the content of the show, my personality, and just the way that New York was at that moment. It was really lovely though, but it was a lot. I was a little, overwhelmed.
Now, in preparation, Alan, for this, I listened to the audio version of your autobiography, Not My Father's Son. First of all, does that take a long time to do the audio version?
Yeah, I mean like a day, maybe 1 or 2 days.
That's all? Okay, I thought maybe it would take much
2 days.
longer.
No.
But it's a really great book if you haven't read it or listened to it yet. It's Alan exploring the, I guess, tumultuous, relationship you have with your father, who, you think maybe had his own emotional, psychological problems. And you thought, I know you talked about this a little bit, I thought it was so interesting that that was sort of early training. You're dealing with an abusive father in becoming an actor.
Yes, I mean, I think that when you deal with, if you're a child and you're dealing with, well, anyone actually who deals with someone who is abusive and more powerful than you, that you have to, things like you have to understand, you have to walk into a room, like walking on stage, and understand the mood, understand the energy. How are they today? What's going to happen? How should I behave? How will my behaviour affect, you have to be really good at reading a situation, which is, like acting. And I just think and then you have to alter your performance, I suppose, or your being to sort of get through. And so it's not like I don't think that's a great thing, but I recognise things in my dealing with my father that are actually also really good things to have as an actor. I don't think I wouldn't recommend.
Well, for some people they shut down, and are completely afraid of letting out emotions in any way.
Well, I wasn't letting out emotion. I don't mean I was acting. I mean I sort of was. I was like, I guess you read a situation, you sort of pick up on the energy of someone, and then you alter your behaviour. But it wasn't like I was pretending something else. I was just sort of monitoring, that's the best way, monitoring my behaviour, just to basically think, how unscathed could I get? How could I be at the end of this, time with my father?
Was there any talk of making that book into a movie? I mean, I don't know. Would you be involved in some way?
And the sort of was. I was just like, nah, I don't want to do that.
Really?
Yeah.
It would make an interesting cinema.
I suppose so. But the thing is, like, part of the book was also already on TV. Because it's about my dad, but it's also about my grandfather. And I did that Who Do You Think You Are show, and they traced my maternal grandfather. So I was finding out during the time I was doing that, I was also, finding my grandfather died in Malaysia playing Russian roulette, which none of us knew. And at the same time as that, my father was telling me that I wasn't his biological son.
That's what I'm saying. Make a good movie.
Well, it would make a good movie, yeah. But I just feel like it's sort of, I don't know. Some things. I don't know. I wrote a novel a long time ago, and I sold the right. I gave it to these people to make a film of it, and it's just difficult letting go of something that's, because also that novel was kind of a thinly veiled memoir as well, and I think it's difficult letting go of stories about yourself to people to interpret them. And I remember sitting with that novel, sitting in the Four Seasons in Los Angeles hotel. I had these meetings all day, and all these people were coming in and sort of saying, "So Alan, your book is about blah blah blah." And I was like, "I know what my fucking book's about," and I didn't like it. I didn't like people telling me what my book was about, and I thought, well, So anyway, I've not had a very good history, because what I did was I did a deal with these people so that I could adapt it into a film, and I did, and then there's a character in it who's based on my friend Sue, and she's like this, London, kind of geeky London Jewish girl, who's, kind of a nut, kind of a weirdo. And they were like, "Winona Ryder, let's play this part." And I was like, "What?" And so what I did was I bought the rights back from the people. So it was just a disaster.
Crashed.
Yeah, I love Winona, please don't get me wrong, but I don't think she was absolutely right for that.
Well, right. So I want to know, of course, you're Scottish, and I want to just, if you don't mind, figure out a little, how does Brexit affect Scotland? Or is it just because they're part of the UK, they've got to go with whatever British Parliament decides?
Well, yes and yes, actually. So basically, when Brexit happened, Scotland voted, 2/3 of Scotland voted to stay in Europe.
Oh, when they had the Brexit,
the first thing,
the national referendum.
A few years ago, several years ago. And Scotland voted overwhelmingly to stay in the European Union. And about a year before that, there was the referendum in Scotland about independence, which I was very pro-independence.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the reasons that people voted no was that they were told that if they voted yes, then Scotland would not be able to be in the EU anymore. And then, of course, the next year, so all these people who voted no, thinking we've got to stay in the EU, the following year, they were suddenly like, oh, we can't be in the EU anyway, because now Britain's going to come out of it. So it was very affected by that. And I think, but what it's shown to me, and I think hopefully to a lot of people in Scotland, that yet again, a decision that is, a Westminster decision, which was against the wishes of the Scottish people, is going to be forced upon the Scottish people. And that's been something that's happened all my life. There was a thing called the poll tax during Thatcher's time, when Thatcher used to try out things in Scotland. There was a tax, this poll tax. He tried it out in Scotland, didn't go well, and then they kind of tried it on the rest of Britain, and then there's another thing, this sort of disability, and it was lots of things. And it's just this idea that constantly Scotland is forced to do things against its will by a government in London. And I don't know, I just think surely, and also Boris Johnson is despised in Scotland and despised in a lot of places, but this idea that this upper class buffoon is controlling the outcome and the legacy of Scottish people, it drives me nuts. And hopefully drives a lot of people nuts, because I think already they're talking about another independence referendum in Scotland.
But now I'm just playing devil's advocate, because I don't know. But can Scotland, you think, could survive as a viable country on its own?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I mean, it's not just me, I believe that, but it's not just me. That was one of the things, I was on this program called Question Time. It's a political program in Britain, and I was on it next to this awful, I was sitting next to this lady from the Daily Mail, which I don't know if you know, is a hideous right-wing rag. And she was saying that Scotland, we were called subsidy junkies, that we were in some way we needed England because we got so much more than we deserved. And there was a whole kind of litany of this sort of rhetoric. And actually, what became apparent was that Scotland actually gives, in terms of taxes and all this, gives more than it gets back, and gives more per capita than people in the rest of the country. And also, there's a lot of things that there's the renewable energy and everything. Scotland's rich in wave energy, wind energy. They can't get the money to really do that, because Westminster is controlling the purse strings. And so there's, it depends who you read, of course, but I think actually I would take my chances on an independent Scotland than Brexit and more Tory party rules.
And then, of course, if Scotland did become independent, they could join the EU.
That's the thing. There's been all these since Brexit. Nicola Sturgeon, who's the First Minister of Scotland, she's been having all these talks. EU is saying, we welcome you, Scotland, we welcome you. So that's not an issue. I don't know. I think we're very fiery people. The lion rampant is our symbol, but also I think we're very timid people when it comes to making big decisions. And so I just hope that, and we kind of doff our caps to the layered, and I feel that's what happened the last time. I just hope it doesn't happen. I mean, there's all this energy right now because everyone's furious at Boris and this absolute horrible rhetoric he's spouting. I just hope that continues.
Is Boris Johnson on par with Trump? I mean, is there one? Are they both the same?
I mean, they're yes. But interestingly, Boris Johnson is upper class, Oxbridge, entitled, privileged, establishment. He was always destined to be doing this. He was in a group at university with the former Prime Minister, David Cameron, and Gove, and all these other politicians. They're groomed from a long. The class system in Britain is really still this elite group controls, are sort of bred to control the country. And so whereas Trump, I feel, isn't in that group, and that's that. There's the populist. I mean, I think it's such an awful thing. Populism, as a word to me, does not encapsulate what Trump does.
Right.
It's sort of a nasty way of capturing a word and making it so. Anyway, but you know the way that he's not part of the establishment. He's obviously rich and been around and everything, but he was never part. He's not part of the kind of political establishment we think of, like being groomed to be a leader. So, but Boris definitely was. He's got that combination of the sort of trashy populist using fear as a weapon that Trump has, and he definitely did. Like with Brexit, he had this whole thing about how many millions of pounds is going to go into the National Health Service. It would say it was completely a lie, made up figures. So they shared their willingness to lie to their voters in order to get what they want. But Boris has the added horror of entitled, upper class twit. Asshole.
Alright, well, let's get on to a different subject then.
Yes, please.
Alan, of all the people that you've worked with, and you've worked with many, who did you think was the sexiest?
I think Jessica Lange.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? Now, what was the project that you were working with?
I've done 2 films with her. I did one, but mainly I did a film called Titus, a version of Titus Andronicus, and she was I was her husband. I was the emperor, and she was Tamara, Queen of the Goths. And I just think she's. Obviously, she's a bit older than me, and I, from being a young actor, a young person, just thought she was a stunning actor and just completely sexy. And then I worked with her, and we were, did sex scenes together.
But was it her personality that was the sexiest part about her?
I think actually with people, what I find sexy is that there's this sort of, comfort with your body, and comfort with your sort of sensuality, and kind of sense of mischief about it. You're I don't know. There's something, but it's all to do with comfort in your countenance, and I think that's what it was really with her. And but yeah, I really do think. And then on a boyfriend, I would say I've not worked with him, but I find him so sexy. The one, what's he called again? The English guy, and he was this is so boring.
Oh, Boris Johnson.
No, the one, in that film with Leonardo DiCaprio when he was walking through rivers all the time, and The Covenant or The Revenant or something. The English actor who he fought.
Hardy.
Tom Hardy.
Oh,
yeah. Just forget about it. It's a similar thing to Jess. It's that completely comfortable, it seems, in his demeanour and his masculinity and everything like that. Yeah, I find him. Yes, I definitely entertain him.
Now, I think I've heard this from read this from other celebrities, that when you become famous, you become in this rarefied or this weird world, maybe in some ways, where you're supposed to know every other famous person, famous people. Like if you walk into a room and there happens to be other famous people there,
yes,
you're supposed to automatically know them through this system.
Yeah. Well, there's a thing, I call it celebrity nod. That you see it if you're in a situation where there's another famous person, you just sort of go, I'm famous, you're famous, hi. And usually you'll be brought together in some sort of way that people will sort of,
And is it a pecking order? Do you have to kind of feel each other out then?
Well, sort of. I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. I think that, often at times, because I don't really keep up with popular culture that much. Well, not avidly. I'm not, especially with, I'm afraid to say, with young, I meet all these people, these young people, and I just go, who are you? Often on a red, hi, I have no idea who they are. And also, I think we all look alike. All these girls, I just think there's sort of type of young celebrity that they all just blend into one face for me, and I just don't get it. And so there's that. I don't really pay that much attention, and that's weird. And then when you sort of are aware the way that other people are treating someone or talking about them, that they're a big deal, but you've no idea why or what. That I find kind of difficult. But there's sometimes funny things like at the Oscars, the Vanity Fair party at the Oscars, like nobody's publicist. You're not allowed to have publicists or anything. So it's all just, it's literally, everyone's famous. Everyone's super famous, and I find that really interesting about who still, because like if you're in a situation, a situation, you tend to kind of have a little bit of armor. You have people with you to, you have a little coven, and you have people to sort of help you in and out of the situation, out of places. Whereas in that, for one night, at that party, all of the most famous people in the world are there. So it's fascinating who chooses to try to replicate that normal thing.
Do most people let down their guard?
Most people do. Most people do, and it's really fun, and it's kind of just, and also because everyone, there's no press, there's no, it's not like normal parties, so everyone's kind of, gets wasted and smokes pot and stuff. But one time in one corner, there was sort of a corner, kind of slightly cordoned off by people, and guess who's at the centre of it?
Tell us.
Oprah.
Oprah.
Oprah kept. I know. I was slightly disappointed. I do love Oprah, and I've met her, and she's been absolutely charming. But I was very disappointed in that situation. She was still doing the thing. I guess it's Oprah, but everyone is famous.
She was a little queen bee about it.
Yeah, a little bit. And then the other funny thing that happened to me in that situation, another party, like it's the Golden Globes or something. There was a Golden Globes when David Bowie had died. And at the party, the news was going around that David Bowie had died. And I told Lady Gaga that David Bowie had died. Like, we were just chatting and we've been smoking a lot. And I turned to her and went, "Isn't it awful?" And she was like, "What? No, didn't you hear David Bowie died?" She went, "What?" And and I one time accidentally, I told Liza Minnelli that Charles Aznavour had died. She didn't know that either. So I've got a habit of telling very famous people, other very famous people.
Is there some news that you want to break to me right now? Wow.
Lady Bunny is still
David Bowie telling Lady Gaga, that must have been traumatic.
It was.
I mean, for her.
It was.
And now you're on stage with Lady Gaga. Right before she goes
exactly.
Well, Ellen, do you find, like I was mentioning, before you got here, before you came on stage, you've got such a varied career. Is that deliberate, or do you just, like to jazz it up?
I just like to jazz it up. It's deliberate in that I now do all these different things that I like.
Yeah.
But I didn't start out to be, I don't know. At drama school, I did a course that wasn't just acting. There was other directing and writing and There was other things. So I think I've always been like that, and I've always made a lot of my own work. Like I used to do, when I was at drama school, I did a stand-up comedy thing with another boy called Victor and Barry, and then later we wrote a sitcom. I've written films, I've written books, I do concerts. I do make a lot of my own work, and now I've got this production company called Club Coming Productions, and we're trying to get some of these projects made. So I think it's partly that. I've never just sort of waited for the phone to ring. I've just sort of, but not as a reaction to anything. I just actually like being in control of my own destiny in a way, and I actually really, as an artist, more things I want to say than just the roles I play.
Do you get more recognition from The Good Wife than any other project?
It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell over the years.
Does it depend on the age of the people too?
I used to be able to guess. Like people would come up and I would sort of mentally go, GoldenEye. Romeo Michelle sounds good.
Spy Kids,
yeah. That's a lot. But but it's hard to tell now. But of a certain age, it's always Masterpiece Mystery, because I'm the host of Masterpiece Mystery.
Yeah.
So of a certain older demographic, I get that. also recently, I found out that Patti Smith, she is obsessed with English or British crime shows, detective shows, and that's what I introduced on Masterpiece Mystery. I also introduced these British TV crime shows, and so I met Patti at this thing, and I was like, oh my God, it's Patti Smith, and she went, "You're the mystery guy." And I was like, "What?" And she went, and I went, "Oh, I see what you mean." It's like, do you mean I'm the host of Masterpiece Mystery? And she went, "Yeah, I've always wanted that job." I saw her just like the other week, and she was talking about how she woke up that morning all jet lagged at 5 a.m. and she turned on PBS, and there was me introducing some cop show. So there's a certain one like that, and with kids who are sort of in their 20s and 30s, early 30s now, who grew up with Spy Kids. And actually, the thing about Spy Kids, it's a kids film. I did 3 of them. That it's sort of ageless. It hasn't. Kids now still watch it, and it's sort of a magical Willy Wonka kind of world. It's not dictated by a certain time. So it's aged well. And what's happened is that I thought there was going to be a certain 4 or 5 years of people who would always know me from that, but it's expanded and keeps expanding. And what's lovely about it is that it's people who I've been a magical figure in their childhood. So they and I remember very clearly when it first started, when the first kids who were kids when Spy Kids came out, when they got old enough to be in a bar or something, and they came up to me, and instead of because people are very weird and awkward about approaching people. And I remember when it changed from like, oh, my girlfriend thinks you're, blah, blah. To suddenly being like, oh, you're Mr. Flip. And so I've got this really great relationship with young adults because of that. But I just was recently filming this thing in Albuquerque, and there was a boy on the set. I could tell he was, geeking out. And I knew exactly, I knew it'd be Spy Kids. Or maybe X-Men, I get them confused because there's a lot of, comic book geeks. Out there. But this boy, I could see he was wanting to say something but didn't want to say in front of the other crew. So one time I was coming back from my trailer to the set, he was walking to the loo or something, and he saw me and went, "Oh, Alan, I've been meaning to say to you, I just, you touched me a lot when I was a child." And I was like, oh my God, this guy's bigger than that. He meant it really nicely, but I was like, just keep that between
It's funny. Now, also, I want you, if you don't mind, in your book, Not My Father's Son, there was a little levity when you were mentioning the Eurovision Award. Now, I've never seen them, but I've heard all from my European friends how much fun it is. Now, did they have a host?
Yeah, they have a host.
Maybe you can explain.
So it's the thing called the Eurovision Song Contest, and it's for people from Europe. It's been going on for. It was actually set up in the early 1950s as a way to sort of bring Europe together after the Second World War. And with a song competition, each country would choose a song, and have a competition, choose a song, and they would all go to somewhere and they would all sing their songs, and people would vote from all over Europe.
And there's been some famous winners, right?
ABBA sang Waterloo. That was in 1976. And Celine Dion represented Switzerland for a time. I think she won. And now, bizarrely, Israel and Australia are in it. Like, it's not just the Europe.
Okay.
It's weird, kind of the whole thing, and it's usually quite sort of tacky, poppy, Euro trashy songs, and it's just fantastic. And it's on like in May, and they have all these thousands of songs. It's all like Croatia, Bosnia Herzegovina, all these crazy. And there was one time, like a few years ago, I watched it, and people stormed the stage when Holland or Spain were singing their song. Nobody noticed because they just thought it was part of the dance routine.
Because they were
demonstrators. Demonstrators. Demonstrators stormed the stage, but people just thought it was part of the thing. And because they all have costumes and everything, and so they just do this endless. It goes on like 20-something songs. And then there's a middle bit. It's sort of a,
But how did they decide? Is there a panel of judges like America's Got Talent?
what it is, they go to each country, and now we go over to Helsinki for the Finnish jury, and they vote.
Oh, okay.
But what's terrible is that they do this block voting. So if you live in like the Ukraine, then you vote for Russia and Lithuania, and so if you're in Holland, you vote for Belgium. So everybody. There was a host of it in Britain called Terry Wogan, who was this Irish guy who was the commentator, and he resigned in protest against the block voting from different countries. It's so hilarious, and guess what? Nothing changed. And now it's Graham Norton. You know him?
Oh yeah. Of course.
He is hilarious, and he's never hosted, but he's like whatever the country is, there's these kind of plastic sort of people introduce it. And then he comments on it and introduces it. So the last time they had it in Israel, because there was actually a great song called "I'm Not Your Toy" by this girl called Netta, which I love. I play it when I DJ. With the immortal chorus of "I'm not your toy, you stupid boy." And, so the country that wins it has to host it the next year. So this past year, in the spring, it was in Tel Aviv, and they have an act in the sort of after all the songs before the voting bit. They have a sort of an act, and there's been like tremendous Riverdance began as an act at the Eurovision Song Contest, and there were various people. This year in Israel, as the act was Madonna, and she did terribly badly.
Oh right.
Yeah, she did. It was like she
gave that
screwed her monitor, and she went off key. Yeah, it was a disaster. And then what they did was I think it's even worse that when they auto-tuned it for when they put it out later on YouTube, which is just always, don't put it out, I think.
Right.
But or anyway, she recovered. But so it's this really great thing, but it's so weird and nuts. It's really difficult for American people to grasp it.
Well, is it something that would that be an ideal job for you to be like Graham Norton?
The host of the Eurovision Song Contest, I would adore it. Actually, what I would like more, and there have been calls for this, because I wrote a sitcom in Britain with my friend in like the early 90s, mid 90s, called The High Life, about flight attendants on a crappy Scottish airline. And in one episode, we represent Scotland in the Song for Europe competition, which is the competition where you choose the song that goes to Eurovision. And we did a song and it was like two of us, the purser, who's this woman called Siobhan, and then the captain of the thing, who's called Captain Hilary Duff, long before Hilary Duff was a thing. And we did a song called Piff Paff Puff, I want to have it off till I cough. and like when the independence thing was happening in Scotland, people said, Alan, if Scotland becomes independent, will you and Forbes really represent Scotland in the Eurovision Song Contest, singing that song? And I said yes. I love it.
I remember like Israel had a trans.
She won, trans women won, Dana International, yeah, and actually then in Austria.
Oh right.
God,
the bearded drag queen. I can't remember the name right now.
Anyway, yes, she won too for Austria.
Yes. So
it's very sort of, progressive in that way, that they have all these hilarious, acts and things, and people of different, the whole LGBTQ spectrum are well represented, even from countries that, but like, the last one, Russia was going to withdraw because there was a trans person representing some country. There's always that, there's always this drama. But it's kind of like a weird, it's sort of like if the UN was like a sort of sequined tacky game.
How are we doing for time wise? Maybe
8:30.
8:30.
Yeah.
I think we started. I can't remember. 7:30.
A little over 7:40 we started.
7:40.
Yeah.
Well, we said we could have some questions too, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Just one more question before
Yes.
we do. You've played drag several times,
Yeah.
right? And what has been your most memorable experience of doing drag?
Well, two things. One, I think androgyny works well on me. I'm like, I love a bit of guyliner. I'm always kind of sort of, doing, and when I do photo shoots, they always have to make me kind of you know, and I like getting dressed up, and I love all that. This past week I got all these jewels stuck to my face for a photo shoot, but so androgyny, like the sort of, you know, mixture thing of being a bit femmy, that's a good look for me. But if I go the whole hog, I'm not that attractive a lady. But I've done that a couple of times for parts. I played a transvestite in a miniseries called The Runaway, and I shot it in South Africa about 8 years ago or something. And that was like 3 months, and that I found so interesting, so difficult, because everything seemed to be constricting. It was like bondage. Like you know, you can't, obviously you can't open your legs, you know, to get out anyway. You've got to, you can't run, you can't run away. You can't, you know what I mean? Everything about being a woman, or being a woman in a sort of a certain type, is constricting. Like you're held in, your legs are held in, you're teetering on heels. Even a bra I found really like itchy and constricting and awful. Nails, the acrylic nails on top of it. So sore and weird. And you know, and then like I did that stuff called Veet.
Is that like Nair?
Yes, it's the same thing as Nair.
Yeah.
It dissolves the hair off your body. It's like a Nazi experiment. It dissolves, and the smell of dissolved hair, it's just awful. And I had to do it everywhere, and it was not pleasant twice. And I just found it, but also, you know, when you do that, like, your ass looks great because you're standing, your backs and your legs look great, you're pushing out all your secondary sexual things, and so you feel sexy because you're basically standing like this, but it's perilous. You can't run away. And that's what I found really interesting, this idea that being a woman is so connected to being sort of in bondage to men, and with being that the way that it's accepted that women must be in a sort of, in our society now, it makes them sort of these delicate, vulnerable things that can't get away. You're not free. You know, you can't just run down the street, and you can't even get out of a car very easily. You can't open your legs, you know. And I just found that mentally, I found that really weird, because it's something I've never, until then, really ever. I mean, I'd worn a dress every now and then for some photo shoot, or like in Cabaret, I sang a song, but with a dress on. But to actually be sort of pretending to be a real woman, or a person who lived their life as a woman, I found it very, very vulnerable making.
Well,
What do you think?
Well, I can relate. All right, well, let's open the room to questions. Listen, this is your chance to talk to Alan close up and personal. So, Alan, people will raise hands. Why don't you choose them? That would be easier, you know? Who's got a question for Alan, including what might be on his agenda coming up in terms of projects?
Well,
Yes.
I kind of have two questions, if I may.
Yes.
My name is Jack, and before Club Cummings, sorry, thank you. It was Eastern Bloc.
Yeah.
Do either of you remember what the name of the bar was before Eastern Bloc? That's my first question.
Wonder Bar.
Thank you. Okay, cool. And then my father was like a lot of tough love with me as well. Creative
He was
juices.
what?
My father, like tough love.
Oh.
My father was a little homophobic. He eventually came around. I made him drinks as we got older before he passed away, and he really came around. So my question is to both of you actually, how did either your mom or your dad contribute to your like creative process as an individual growing up to become artists, be creative performers? What did your mom and or dad contribute to who you are?
Well, I mean, it was a weird sort of thing for me, because my dad told me I was just useless and worthless. I mean, literally. And my mum told me I was precious. And so I didn't believe either of them. So I think in a funny sort of way, I had to become more independent in my thought because of that, and make up my own mind about things in the world. So I think from a very early age I questioned grown-ups, I still do. And I feel that that sort of confusion, which never really ended from then. I mean, there was a little bit more, when I became famous, my dad was a little bit more sort of, you know, not supportive, but he acknowledged, I could tell that, you know, that sort of, that I wasn't a failure in some way was sort of made him slightly less evil. But I think in a way what that did was made me have my own voice as a person and as an artist. So actually it really was a kind of a big influence, even though at the time when I was realizing it, it was a very confusing thing because it seemed to be like the two people who are in your formative years are the most important and influential grown-ups are telling you absolutely different things about yourself. So in a way, though, and still to this day, like I feel it's interesting when you do a show or something and people are all worried about the reviews or blah blah. I really don't care because I feel if you believe the good ones, you have to believe the bad ones. Mm-hmm. And so actually, for me, it's much more important what I think of something that I'm doing. And like, you know, sometimes recently I did a thing and I thought it was terrible. It just didn't turn out very well. And I thought it was terrible. I still did it my best and professional. And I went and tried to make it as good as it could be, but I just actually thought it was terrible. And I think a lot of people can't do that. A lot of people find that very difficult. You've either got to be, or usually just completely gung-ho for whatever they're in, unquestioning. And I actually think I've got a good ability to stand back from something, do it to the best of my ability, give it my all, to stand back from it and think, what do I think? And for me, that's more important. Mm-hmm. What about you, Linda? What did your parents?
Well, that's why I can relate to your book. I mean, my father or mother were not abusive, but I think there's a lot of I think that I came out of my childhood very skeptical about a lot of stuff because I think that some of the messages I got from my parents weren't being carried out in full. You know what I mean? Good-meaning people, but perhaps not as. I think I got mixed messages from them. Right. But you know what? I'll say this for my therapist. Focus is on Alan, okay? So, yeah. Oh, that's why I do drag. Who else has a question for our guest star?
Yes.
When did you come out professionally? Were you always out, and did your sexual orientation ever affect your work in getting TV or film jobs?
I always think it's difficult to answer that question in terms of was it difficult? Who knows? So it's sort of hypothetical because it is. I don't feel like my sexuality and my openness in my life has been detrimental to my career because it seems to be going quite well.
Were you closeted?
No, I mean, it's different. I mean, I did have a sort of a coming out thing publicly because it's weird because suddenly you're famous and everybody wants to know and so you kind of have to, you realize everybody's asking and it's kind of, I guess, by some of the roles I was playing and things, kind of obvious. But I used to be married to a woman, I had relationships with other women, in between relationships with men. So I've always considered myself to be bisexual and so the combination of that, gradually becoming famous in America at a time when sexuality was completely, everyone was obsessed by it.
Really charged.
Really charged. I was at my breakfast table watching the news when I was about to go to rehearsal when it was all the Clinton scandal with my very good friend Monica Lewinsky, and I was just so shocked about what's going on here. Why is everyone so, just the attitude towards sexuality in general, let alone homosexuality, and the sort of the shame and the kind of the puritanical thing, it's really huge. And so anyway, suddenly I'm up here and I'm on Broadway with my bum out and being very sort of open, and so it was a really interesting thing. Anyway, so and also I guess I had my public sort of coming out thing when I had my first adult relationship with a man, because up till then I'd had relationships, I suppose, more shorter ones with men, and you don't have to sort of do a press release when you shag someone, but I felt it was when because I'd had some bad experiences with the tabloids in Britain in my previous relationships, and I was now having a relationship with a man. I just didn't want that to affect the same thing to happen to his family or my family. So that's when I did it, and I did it in a way where I thought it would be the best. I thought, like, I'm going to do this. I'll save it. I did it. I went Out magazine. I went on the cover of Out magazine naked, and I talked about my sexuality in the way that I see it, because I still see it. That it's grey. It's not black and white. I don't. Obviously, and I'm not. And I think it's an interesting time now that I, for a long time, battled against people's desire for me to choose to say one thing or the other, and I just never felt that was who I was, and I felt like the pendulum has swung, but I'm still the same person, even though I'm married to a man now. Anyway, so I think it's an interesting time that now, the idea of being gender or sexually more fluid and this sort of pansexual thing is much more accepted and understood by a younger generation than initially. So I'm glad everyone's caught up. But I sort of feel like it was important for me to hang on to that, because I think what happens a lot with people in their sexuality, especially if you're being gay, or that you felt like an outsider, and then you want to belong, and what you do is you kind of wear a uniform. Actually, the most interesting thing about you is being unique and different, and then you come and you look like everyone else, and have the same body as everyone else, and listen to the same music as everyone else. And I really, really resisted that, because I feel it wasn't that I resisted it just wasn't a part of my life to do that, and I saw it and see it happening to so many people, and so that I thought all the more reason to try and say it's not black and white, it's grey.
You've been a trailblazer, really, because there's definitely been a lot of people now, perhaps, that, you know what I mean, are very open-minded. Open about their sexuality to the public, but really, seriously, back in '98, which doesn't even seem that long ago.
No, it was a while now, 20 years.
Exactly.
But it was also that thing when you imagine, really, America was just, the idea of a blowjob was just shocking. People horrified at having to explain to their children what a blowjob was. And that was what it was like when I came to this country. I was just like, what's going on?
Anybody else have a question?
Yes, sir.
Hi. So we were both huge fans of Instinct.
Oh.
And every episode, we had to make sure we were in front of the TV for both seasons, and we really got to know the characters and the different storylines, and we suspected that there was going to be more explored in there, especially with you becoming a dad and all that, and your character becoming a dad and everything, and it seemed and also going by what your co-stars were saying, that it just was not going to be renewed for a third season, and the news just came kind of suddenly. It took us as viewers by surprise, because
Yes.
we're oh my God, there's just so many things we want to see happen. So did it take the actors by surprise, the creative team too?
We knew before obviously, but it's one of these things that I think always on a TV show, you don't, an American TV show, you never know actually it's going to be renewed and all of that. And to be honest, I knew kind of shortly after we finished shooting the second season that it wasn't going to be renewed, because there was a change of, Les Moonves was the head of CBS, and as we know, he had to depart. And so there's a new person running the network, and then there was also, had been 2 new people running the studio. So there was really no one who was supporting the show in terms of, or who had not supporting it, but who was the sort of the, pom-pom girl of the show. And it was a show that was needed some help because it was, sort of it was the first ever. That's what I'm very proud of actually. It was the first ever network drama in the history of American television to have a gay leading character. So, in one way, it was amazing. It made it to 2 seasons, but also it was, it didn't. They put it on in the summer, and it wasn't. It didn't do that well. It did better than everyone had expected. And in 1 week, it was actually the most watched scripted show in America.
Oh.
Yeah, even comedies and everything in the second season. But it just didn't have. It didn't have a really strong supporter at the top. And people want to, when they come in, they want to have a new broom, and they want to kind of, aside from the shows like with the acronyms, that have been on for years and make lots of money, a lot of shows like ours kind of got the heave. And I get it. It's sort of, you want to do your own thing, and you don't want to. So, but it was, I knew from a long time ago, and also I'd been, on The Good Wife for so long, and every year you think, are we going to get renewed? Who knows? And so you have to have this kind of, be very sanguine about it and think that it probably isn't going to happen, and then it does. But what was bad was that we knew for such a long time, and then we knew before even it went out. It made the decision even before it went out. The second season went out, so it wasn't at all to do with how well or badly it did. It was actually just a sort of business thing, and I think it's always bad when something like that happens, especially with this, because we're about to have a child and all these big plot things were set up for the third season, but showbiz.
Well, we always thought it was like Law and Order SVU, but with a sense of humor and much better fashion. Thanks to you.
It's good suits, yes, good fashion. Actually, I remember it was one week when I went on my Twitter thing, and it was he wore 5 coats, 5 different coats in one episode.
We have time for like 1 or 2 more questions.
Yes.
When you were doing the Damn Scottish play, did you experience the curse? And what did you think of all these adaptations like Scotland, PA of the Damn Scottish play?
Well, I'd say it. I'm going to say it, Macbeth. Because the reason that people don't, there's all been these things about curses and everything, but I worked it out that I'm not very into sort of superstitious things. The one thing I don't like is I don't like when people put shoes on a table.
Oh.
And I realised that was because I'd seen Blood Brothers. And there was a lady who was the mother of Blood Brothers was, take the shoes off the table. And the curse of Blood Brothers was because of that. Anyway, the other day I said it to my assistant, he put some shoes of mine on the table. I was like, take those off! But the real reason that the whole thing with Macbeth, why people don't like to say it in a theatre, is because it was such a huge, when it first came out, the play, it was such a big success. It was basically like Hamilton of its time, or whatever, or Mamma Mia. Do you know what I mean? It was like stormer of a show, and really, really popular. And so why people didn't want to say it, because if you said it in a theatre, it was kind of like, because your show's going to get dumped and they're going to bring a production of Macbeth in and take over. That's how popular it was. So the real reason that people don't like to say it in the theatre is because of that. Is because it's sort of the superstition is don't mention it because it will take over and demolish you. So all this other stuff about the curse and people is kind of just a sort of lore that I don't really buy into. And also when you do like a one person, well there's 2 other people in it, but basically a one person Macbeth, I learned the entire play of Macbeth. It would be pretty difficult not to say Macbeth. Do you know what I mean? When it's just you backstage and you've got all these different characters, some of whom are named Macbeth, to not ever mention the title of the play. So I just kind of early on decided not to do that. But and I mean I think what's great about plays like that, I did that with the National Theatre of Scotland, and a few years before that I did The Bacchae by Euripides, and I think what's great about plays like those that keep being done in different interpretations. I mean, I haven't seen this the Scotland PA one, it's a new musical, isn't it? Or is it the play? Yeah, or whatever. But the reason we keep doing these plays and adapting them in different ways is that they have such great things to tell us. I think that's why we do the Greeks, certain Greeks, and why we do Shakespeare, and why we do, even in the American canon, why certain plays keep coming back. It's because it's not just because they can be interpreted in different ways, it's because they have great things to teach us, and great sort of societal tales and lessons for us all here. So I always love when I mean, I think there's such great themes in Macbeth that I think are really, really important to, you know, sort of, you know, ambition and fear and kind of and you know, and also superstition. You know, the witches are just kind of superstition, and they kind of he acts on basically some crazy like a what do you call it when you get it in a little cracker? Fortune cookie, basically the equivalent of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's all those things are great things to keep interpreting for different generations.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, for me that play was, I've been connected to it all my life. The first play I ever did professionally was Macbeth. I played Malcolm, and the place where my father told me that my mother had this affair that he thought I was the product of was actually called the Burnham Hotel. And so I mean, just it's so ingrained in me. My father's family are from Cawdor. There's a portrait in Cawdor Castle of the first Earl of Cawdor who looks exactly like me. It's crazy, and so I have this great connection with that. So I guess it was my destiny to do the whole thing on my own. But it was, you know, it was kind of an accident. None of these sort of things. I didn't mean to. It just happened. Yes.
Thank you so much for doing this evening. Thank you, Linda. It's fantastic. I had two questions. Do you believe your mom now when she told you about yourself?
I believe her, but I see it through a prism of mum. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mums are. I adore her, and she adores me. But I think always, you know, she's not quite as. She sort of ribs me a bit more now. She's a bit more sort of. I guess she's known me for longer, so she's not quite as. She tells me I'm precious, but she also tells me to stop. You know,
Yes.
being swearing or doing things that embarrass her. Like, you know, I like recently I did this movie. Actually, this is kind of connected, but like, I did a movie where I had lots of sex in it with a young woman, and I she was over here, and there was a screening of it in San Francisco at the film festival there, and my husband's mum was going to come too. So my mother-in-law and my mum were in the audience watching me have very sort of aggressive sexual relations and talk a lot about S&M and all these things, just awful. And I just thought, I put them together, but I didn't sit with them. I couldn't sit with them during the film. I warned them, I said, no. But it was really a lot. It was like pounding. And what was so hilarious was that my mum was really great about it. And she was, at the party, she was like, oh, it was a very, well done, darling. It's a very important message. Everyone should see this film, very important. Like that. But Grant's mum like overcompensated, and she was like, I love the sex scenes. Sex scenes were great. I love the sex scenes. So I was just like, no, don't sex. But anyway, so yes, I do. I do think I am precious to her, and I feel I'm different and unusual. But I'm also I'm also a bit of a mess in other ways too. So. What was your second question?
Oh, what kind of submissions, what kind of projects are you going to be doing with your production company?
Oh, well, it's interesting. We started it off as sort of a way that we thought we could help people who are performing at the bar at Club Cumming to get to different platforms, and that was and we still do have some projects like that, but it's become more sort of spread out, and there's dramas and things, and but they're all sort of in the same Club Cumming sensibility. There's stories that are maybe a little out of the mainstream, and maybe stories that aren't told or voices that aren't heard enough.
So more theatrical stuff?
No, well, like there's one thing, for example, there's a drama that Tim Murphy, who's this writer, he wrote a book called The Christodora, that's based on that's that building on the park, and he's from East Village. He's written a thing which is called Overtime, and it's about in '97 when if you had HIV, HIV/AIDS cocktails, drug cocktails kicked in, and suddenly all these, and they're not like that, the pills you take that saved your life. And so basically all these people who thought they were going to die, were told they had like weeks to live, suddenly had overtime. And they're still alive. They'd maxed out their credit cards. They had terrible survivor's guilt. There's all these. So it's about that time, and a character that John Benjamin Hickey's going to play about who was in that situation. He was alive because of the cocktails. His partner had died. He's also in a pharmaceutical, works for a pharmaceutical company who'd stopped the research into it. And so, and then you discover that he actually, his boss found out he was gay, was going to fire him, and told him he was going to stop the research. Oh, he's stopped it before that, but he has a heart attack as he's telling him, and he lets him die. And as when everyone comes, he says, oh, his last word was to start again the research. So it's got this mystery and sort of grand guignol thing, along with this, story about all these men and women who had suddenly had life, and yet had all this, terror. Imagine just like all your friends dying for years, and suddenly you're not. And I actually met this really funny man recently. He's an artist, and he's a friend of Florent. Do you know Florent? And he's
restaurant owner.
Yeah, and he lived in the same building. And I interviewed him for this podcast, and he said that what a lot of people did in that time was when he knew he was sick, but he just thought, what's the point? There was at that point there was nothing to be done, and people just kind of battled on until they couldn't, until the last minute. And so he went back to I think North Carolina to stay with his mum, but he was just dying, and he he got sick and he had to go to the hospital, and he hadn't been actually diagnosed at that point, but he knew it was coming, and it was the night of the Tonys, and they were saying that Liza was going to be performing on the Tonys, so all through he was waiting in this room in the hospital, and it was just like, Liza's coming up, and after the commercial break, Liza's coming, and so he said that into the room, and it was North Carolina, I guess, they weren't it wasn't New York, 3 people in hazmat suits walked into the room, like that, and he was like, uh-oh, and all of a sudden they went, Liza, and he went, hang on, and he watched Liza, like knowing they were about to tell him, and he watched Liza perform, and he went, yes, and they went, one of them went, are you a homosexual? And he just went, I love that he said that for those 3 minutes, he was in this little magical Liza. I said it was like Liza in Aspen. She saved him, kept him alive, or kept him in a world where AIDS didn't exist for those 3 minutes, and then he turned to these people who were in hazmat suits, and they told him. And then, a few weeks after that, the cocktail thing happened, and there was an article in the New York Times, and then he lived, and he's healthy today. So that, for example, is one of the stories, and there's another thing with Murray Hill. Do you know Murray Hill?
Oh, of course, yes.
There's a thing, Murray Hill and Jonathan Ames, the novelist, and they're which is really a very club coming thing, sort of the high and the low culture, and they've got a show, the Murray Hill show, that's about Murray's life. And there's a few things to think about. There's a film we're trying to get off the ground, which is a bank heist, but it's a sperm bank heist. It's about this vault in Seattle that has the sperm of Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Obama, all these people, and these radical lesbian activists decide to fight the patriarchy and steal all the sperm, and then it goes in the street, and it goes, then things get sticky. So it's a range of things that are all a little out of the mainstream, but with a lot of them are quite fun, and there's a couple that are more serious than that, but that sort of vibe. We try to keep the spirit of the bar, which is about telling stories and making people feel they have a voice in a world that perhaps they don't always feel they're heard.
That's great.
Yeah.
I'm glad to see it.
Can't wait to see all those projects.
Yeah, fingers crossed. We're doing a lot of meetings.
All right, everybody. We'll be watching for Club Coming Productions. You can go to Club Coming right over on 6th Street, and of course, we can always keep up with Alan Cumming on his social media. Ladies and gentlemen, he was very, very generous to come here.